Oh man, this is fun.
This is fun. Yes, Illi Stoval in the house, humble wave.
Yes, yes, yes. Humble wave. On the way to
Humble.
flow.
That's kind of what we're going to begin with, the
Okay.
humble wave. So, welcome, Illi Stoval, my
Well,
spiritual brother.
hello. How are you? How are you, babe?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Can't complain.
Look at
Just
that
flowing.
smile. Look at that smile.
Yeah, I wanna call with you. Come on now. You good.
Oh, I love this. I love this one. So, humble wave me out. I am so excited to have this conversation with my brother.
Of
So,
course. It's
let's
always.
begin because I know so much about this experience, but yet so little. And it's always evolving and always manifesting, and how your connection to so much, to earth, to nature, to yourself, to your relationships, to people, to your masculinity and your femininity, to all of your divine feminine sisters, and to all of your divine brothers. And so, this oneness that you have has evolved for over a period of time. It didn't just like happen overnight
Ooh, it was.
in a sense, until the one time that it did happen,
It
and it
did click, right?
right, but everything kind of progressed like a wave. And
It
so
did. It did.
today, this conversation starts with basically kind of the prequel to the humble wave, where you can start from the humble wave and we can work our way there.
Okay.
um, but I'm opening up the platform to Illi Stoval and how you found peace with all of these things.
It's amazing that you brought this up, and I like the way that we're going to flow through this, because masculinity was definitely a big part of that humble wave, that fruition of that wave, But first, like you said, there's a part of the process where you're just becoming aware and aware, and then, like you said, all of a sudden it's stitched, right? And it's like a rollover point to where it becomes an awareness into knowing. And that's when it starts to become different, because now when you become aware of something, you see the possibility. But when you're in the knowing, you understand the opportunity. And that's a different happening. And that's when growth is very, it's easier because you see the space that's facilitated for you. And the humble wave started because I wanted to understand life from a very unbiased perspective. And I just had a very deep, and I mean deep desire to be unapologetically whole. And back then I did not know what wholeness really meant, because I was, cultivated in a system or a culture that gives you a propagation of wholeness, but it's neither, it's not really, it's empty, and first, I would say becoming the wave is, like I said, awareness of the horizon, the whole me that I became aware of, and I saw myself. And I'm like, why can't I feel that way all the time? And then secondly, why can't I see the view from the horizon? Because when we live on the shore, we feel like we're born in condition. We're born separate. Why are we always longing at the reflection of the horizon? Because something within us knows that I'm supposed to be as whole as that. It's reflecting that beauty. It's reflecting that grace. It's reflecting that presence. And once you sit there and you think about that, and you let that marinate, and you just ask life to teach you, like sometimes we forget, because life is so vivid. It has so many different contrasts and so many specific points that we forget it's a universal lesson. You have to understand your curriculum starts with the foundation of yourself, and that's where we tie in vulnerability. None of this would ever happen. My entire path wouldn't happen if it wasn't because of vulnerability. Vulnerability to open up to others, which we always associate vulnerability with, but it's vulnerability to allow yourself to go deeper in, which is usually safeguarded by the conditions that we want to get rid of or want to dissolve over time, And so the first half, I would say like literally 3 years, because of heavy condition, and just when you're rediscovering that and you're stepping into the wholeness amidst everything that reminds you of the lack, you have to be very devoted, very dedicated, not overly, like when you just, it's like, no, it's like understanding that you enrolled in this, and like I said, that's why it's a desire, a deep desire, and that's just with any being. If you want to make change, or if you want to grow, or if you want to find out, the truth of your presence, you have to be vulnerable enough to know. It's like without vulnerability, there's no love. Without vulnerability, there's no creativity, there's no empathy, there's no connection, there's no relevance. because there's no substance.
When did you
You know?
discover this in your path, when this kind of became this fruition for you to discover, wow, I am not in tune with this space of myself right now, and this is the path I need to really focus on?
Um, Meditation. It was all the process of, diving deeper into meditation. Because at some point, it's funny, like when we start meditation, it's crazy because we jump into it and we don't realize that we're fighting ourselves. We're literally trying to get into a space that we're allowed into, but you have to allow yourself into that space. If you're an abundant being, right? If you understand the value, first of all, if you understand the value, and that's the benefit of meditation, is when you meditate, you understand the genuine natural state value of life, and it's priceless. So therefore, when you come back into your reality and step into your presence with this knowing, how can your priorities shift naturally? Everything shifts because you're with the natural value of life. You're with pure presence. You're with timelessness. Keyword is timelessness, because everything that we enjoy about this life is timeless. Every single thing that we enjoy in this life is timeless, and everything that we find resistance or over or excessive resistance or regression comes from allowing time to overcome timelessness, when timelessness is what literally it's the foundation of time. So for me, realizing, okay, who do I want to be in the midst of this moment? Because it's always the moment. We hear it from various teachers, various cultures, but it's a universal moment. The present is a universal language. This is why yoga, meditation are so profound, because these are mediums of exchange and communication that bypass our very conditions and habits, and that's why they're so beneficial. So for me, at the time when I started doing meditation, I started to realize that, okay, what I'm becoming aware of requires me to let go. Just like I said, the humble wave. To be a part of the ocean, you have to surrender from being associated as the sand. You have to allow all the old you, the past you, everything that you identify with you to dissolve. Not saying that it has to go away forever, but you have to allow it to dissolve, because whatever is naturally you will naturally come back as you come back to presence from that state. You see what I'm saying? So as I would gradually go deeper and deeper into this piece, I started to realize peace has no end. So then I would challenge myself or give myself the opportunity to go deeper and deeper, because it's my right. It's my allowance. It's my abundance. That state is where it's the source of all creativity. So when you realize that in its abundance, like I said, it's an allowance. So as I allowed myself to go deeper and deeper in letting go of my identity, I started to develop, and like I said, associate the humble wave knows it's the ocean. And this means that eventually I could no longer see the difference between me and the whole of life. So at that point, I started to really dive into like understanding, okay, so what do I want to be in this ocean? Just like a wave. Once the wave is part of that ocean, knows it's part of the ocean, that's where its strength comes from. That's where its perseverance comes from, because it understands it's not alone, it's supported. The trough leads to the crest. You can't have that without one or the other. You know what I mean? So sometimes we get caught up on the crown of the crest and not realize how much the trough matters. The foundation matters. A wave cannot sustain itself without the rest of the ocean. And
When
that's the
did you recognize this pattern for yourself, back when you said letting go of my identity? So when we're teenagers, we're so attached to our identity, and we're attached to, or what we think we are when we're teenagers, and this being that we're putting out there. Was this something that happened along your youth life, or more in your young adult life, when you started to recognize the connection to this oneness factor that you're now tuning into when you started meditation? When did you explore meditation?
um honestly, I think it's a cheat code. I'm in New Orleans, so I think in a way I was born into meditation. You see what I'm saying? It's just that it's a lifestyle, and there is a oneness, there is a vulnerability that you grow up naturally having, being from this space. And I always say, like, when I look
You're
back
from
at
New Orleans?
of course, because the city is cultivated off the principles of vulnerability and expression. It's literally the soul haven. You feel me? And I will literally vouch that for any space, for anybody, any soul, because I know why I'm here. And I always, you know, have to sit in gratitude and be thankful that I was raised in this very lifetime, in this specific moment of happening in this city. You see what I'm saying? It's an illusion, you know what I mean? And I'm so thankful to be in this space, you know, where souls can be souls, you know? So I think that was a cheat code for me, you know what I mean? Because it just made it so easy. It was basically me just choosing to open my eyes, honestly, you know what I mean? When I look at that turning point, and like I said, that vulnerability, at some point I realized my identity was not matching up with the love and the peace that I was becoming aware of. So therefore, you have to choose. Am I going to stick with the identity that can't facilitate the peace and love that I desire? Or am I going to jump head first into this water that's literally purifying me and filling me in ways I never knew, you know what I mean? So those first 3-4 years was that. It was really a lot of that. And I would always get, you know, like, why don't you go into this? Why don't you? Because I was becoming a channel at that time. But I chose not to. I just stuck to the curriculum. You know what I mean? Like I said, life, I want to learn from you. I understand that every book, every paragraph, every poem, every artwork, any form of anything comes from a direct blueprint that this life is always giving us, it's always showing us, it's always teaching us if you just sit and you choose to understand. And I think between vulnerability and just a willingness to understand and not getting overwhelmed when you don't understand in the moment, but trusting that through patience and through perseverance, what needs to be known will be known. And therefore, I do understand when people say the wise know you don't know everything, but the wise also know that through patience and resilience, you come to know everything. You see what I'm saying? Everything that needs to be known will be known. And that's one thing that I've realized, you know? So at some point, like I said, I had to hit that turnover, you know, of am I going to associate with the past that does not facilitate the state, the presence that I desire? Or am I going to go into this and let this lesson, this endless lesson, just mold me and cultivate me to be the man or the presence that I'm supposed to be? And I'm thankful that I have, you know, not saying that everything is 100% just like smooth, because the lessons shift. At some point, the lessons were not coming from me not being aware. They started coming from me being aware. And sometimes we have to realize that becoming more aware, the more you become aware, you have to realize what you're becoming aware of is aware that you're becoming aware of it. So your lessons will shift, your lessons will change. They will become more swift, and then sometimes they might require more patience. For me per se, like my lessons come more so through my blessings because I really handle my daily tasks. You know, not saying I don't have stuff that comes up. It's just that I clean my slate nightly and every morning, you know, like every time I rise up out my slumber, you know, I'm like, hey, new slate, because there's always something new in this moment. So like I said, you've known me for some years, you know, and I can't be anything other than what I am at this very moment, because I know that I know that I know.
Yes.
you know, so like for me, I don't change that for nobody, and I don't change that for anybody, because like I said, this identity, this wholeness, I can't replace it with somebody or anything. And I realized that, and I've also been tested on that many times, where you come to know this feeling. And it's funny because we'll come into contact with the feeling that we desire, yet our habits and our conditions will take us to those things that literally take us away from the very thing that literally drives our passion, inspiration, our healing, you know, and our wisdom and our insight, you know. But it's amazing, because think about it. You're a teacher, you understand, you know, and you're a student as well, just as we are, right? And we learn this lesson of how vividly beautiful and enticing this experience can be. You know what I mean? Like it's the truth, you know, because like for me, I can honestly say I'm captivated by life. You know what I mean? Because I understand the specifics and each unique spot in it, but I also understand the undeniable universal nature behind it all. So the more that I've opened up this picture, like for me, like I love, let's say if I say I respect women, it's not that I just respect the physical happening. I respect that energy, that entity. You know what I mean? Just like when you look at weather, there's depth to everything. So do you see yourself as an individual or human, Or do you realize that you're inevitably and always will be a soul, first and foremost, and lastly? You see what I'm saying? And that's your key, because my thing is this. At some point, I realized if I'm coming to know that I'm a soul in this human body, what's the point of that? Okay, what is the underlying reason for me to become aware of that? It's because my soul is like, you're a soul at play. And we forget this. Through all the crazy things that go on in this life, we forget that harmony runs chaos. Because chaos can't exist if there was no harmony. The same thing with beauty, the same thing with everything that we like. Just like I said, we love these moments in time because they remind us of our true nature of timelessness. That's the same thing when we go in nature. And that's something that, like I said, for me personally, how can you not develop as an increasing wave of life when you're synonymously enjoying being part of that life, just wholly, and just trying to allow yourself as many possible ways. And that's what I've done. You know, I've been on a very unconventional path, very unconventional, and I love it because it showed me unconditional love. That's what we fear. You know, we fear the very thing we desire. We desire unconditional love, yet we do not allow ourselves to facilitate what unconditional love has to offer. And that's where the discord and everything happens.
I'm going to stop you there real quick, and we're going to circle back to that because you brought up a really important point in the chaos and harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, so chaos is something our body also craves. Our myofascial system is the one big, beautiful muscle that holds all of our 600 little pockets of muscles together, right?
Mm-hmm.
That muscle loves chaos. So even though we practice yoga and we're moving in these linear movements, and it creates this helix shape, kind of like an onion bag when you get your avocados and onions, and it has this helix shape, and it's a three-dimensional helix that wraps around these muscles, these bodies. And that chaos, those movements, these movements that we do when we're dancing, that is what the body loves. That is what that myofascial system loves. It keeps it lubricated. It keeps it moving. It keeps it fluid. Even though we practice our yin intensive or our yoga linear warrior 1, 2, up, 6, very stoic, or like your Bikram type classes that are very, you know what's coming next.
Right.
Almost lose a sense of essence of going with the flow of things when you allow yourself to just be so structured, because the body almost finds its own sense of resistance. So even though it wants to appreciate this kind of barrier, you want to offer it, you want to put it in the boat almost.
I know exactly what you
don't want to get wet. You're going to want to be in the boat, but I don't want to get wet. You know,
right.
It's almost like, well, I'm actually going to go ahead and get in the kayak when I'm doing my flow and my workout, whether it's, you know, at the gym pumping weights, or if it's, you know, on the elliptical, or doing a movement where the whole body's getting involved with the action, where now you're creating this chaos in harmony. And now the body is beginning to respond to it. So what I want to ask you is, we met at a yoga class.
Yes, we did.
And
yes, we did.
How did yoga, or what about yoga or the healing arts? And you're also, you coach baseball and you're very athletic. What have these healing arts done for you as a male identified being that is occupying the vessel of a male identified vessel, basically? So how has this manifested for you, and what has been released, and have you observed, and how has this also brought about relationship for you?
Okay. All right. So chaos and harmony, and that's going to lead into the yoga, right? So for every degree of chaos, there's a degree of harmony maintaining that chaos. And that's one thing that you have to understand. Just like our life may seem chaotic, but to the sun, does it seem that way to it? No. You know what I mean? The same way we might, you know, see ants crawling, smaller organism, yet they move with a harmony that we truly need to study and understand. You see what I'm saying? But it seems chaotic, but we see the order, you know? So it's funny, like yoga was basically the translator, or the, like almost a codex for me to understanding how I flow through life. Before I would witness the wind, right? I would witness the wind blowing the leaf or moving the branch, but I didn't understand what was moving. You see what I'm saying? Like I could see the movements happening. I can see what was moving it, but I couldn't see what was actually moving it. So yoga allowed me to really understand the flow that like I said, 3 years in, you know, and I used to do elongated stretchings. I used to do this stretch in the middle of all this acres of land, right? Like literally every day, you know? And this is before I knew what yoga was. And it was very intentional. It was very, because at that point I was on a weight journey because I was 265, 270, right? And like I said, I had to work my way down. So meditation was key because it allowed me to tap into that inner strength, that inner willingness to overcome things that I didn't think I could do, you know? So like I said, as you jump into these different degrees of harmony amidst the chaos, that's why you have to find peace in the midst of chaos. And then once you do that, you like unlock or enable this level of harmony that you didn't witness before. And this is why fear is you can't live by it, you know, because it confuses you from the perceptions and awareness that actually allow you to be confidently present, you know? And so, like I said, yoga was such a great lesson. And it, like looking at it now, I until you asked this question, I never really like understood the moment that I understood my flow. You see what I'm saying? Like I learned how to swim in the swimming pool of that soul so that I can learn to swim in the ocean of this world. You see what I'm saying? So it just made it very familiar. I was able to acclimate myself and feel the warm waters of my spirit before jumping and, you know, like fully, like almost fully commencing that wave, you know, like I'll be honest, until I literally just out of nowhere, you know, begun to speak, you know, like, hey, yoga, I didn't have the understanding of inspiration, the breath. Inspiration is capable of overcoming all resistance, and yoga was the defining exercise and medium that showed me that. It really showed me that, because that's how you turn chaos into harmony. It's through natural and genuine, authentic expression and an inspiration of being, you know? And that's what we do. So you got to remember, I came into your class like really 3.5 years, 4 years strong in meditation daily, you know, like 2 to 3 times daily, sometimes a couple hours, sometimes 30 minutes, you know what I mean? Just, that's how it was. I've meditated for 6-7 hours, like, because that's what spirit was.
My class and sat in meditation the entire class. Like, literally sat the entire class in meditation. As soon as we began meditation, it was
yeah, you know, and because, like I said, it's a universal teacher, you know. So some people, and this is why a lot of people have to be comfortable. It's not just men. You have to be vulnerable in your path. You have to be vulnerable in your growth. Because let's say if I go to that class and I'm not vulnerable to learn it my way or hear the lessons that's coming, everybody's in that space, but everybody is receiving a very unique message for each soul signature. You see what I'm saying? Like, because we're all unique signatures in this life. So in that class, like sometimes I would be in the movement, and like I said, sometimes the movement would be overwhelming because I was trying to learn in the midst of trying to understand as well, and that just wasn't the case. You know, I was like, nah, do one or the other. You know, like either flow, because like you said, the thing that we like by that chaos and that movement and that is spontaneity, because spontaneity is a key part of unconditional. You see what I'm saying? Don't we all crave spontaneous love? You know, a love that just continuously refreshes itself. And it's crazy because that's the love you can give yourself. You know, and I'm saying this as a grown man, you know what I mean? Like, that's the love you're supposed to be able to give yourself. But how can you give yourself something that you're not acclimated to, or you're not even taking the time to understand it? So I should thank you very much for allowing me to understand my soul language. You know what I mean? Because before I was aware, you know, and it's like, I was able to see, but not fully understand myself amidst this continuous happening around me. You know, I was being wild and whoa, and this can't be happening. This is unreal, you know, but it's unbelievably real. You know what I mean? And after that path into yoga, it just allowed me to, right now, like even with certain injuries and stuff that I overcome now, it's like I'm able to, meditation and yoga, it's a marriage that needs, it's they're the same when you really understand the purpose. It's about allowing inspiration to flow. When you meditate, right, you're humbling the mind, you're opening the corridor of the heart so what? The soul can flow through. That's all we're doing. And you have to understand that. And like I said, you have to be vulnerable. The reason why it's hard to be that way is because that requires you to drop the guard of culture. You know, who are you around you? And that's a hard thing to do. You know, that's a hard thing to do, especially when you're amongst this culture. You're in this culture. And that's why, like I said, at some point, that yoga class allowed me to reach that threshold. You know what I mean? Like, I can't stop this momentum. Because think about it, I came into that class with a lot of momentum.
You did.
Because when we first met, you was like, so what do you, you know, it's like nothing. I'm just, you know, learning. And that's all I've ever told y'all. I was like, I'm learning. I'm always learning.
You know, I love that you brought that up because that class, that's our Tuesday night class.
Mm-hmm.
And we still now do that Tuesday night class again. And in that class, I teach a meditation technique that's not very popular or at all very familiar. And it comes from the Tantra lineage and it's known as Erewhon and Arhawan.
Mm-hmm.
And you spoke to how we are in this space and you're creating the environment, right? Your body has the front gate and the back gate. And we are tuning in to this protection, almost this meditation that creates this auric field of consciousness around us where we can feel the sensation of what it's like to be around our friends and family, what it's like to be in community, and what it's like to be around environments where we feel safe and brave and where we feel afraid and timid, right? So we have this differentiation. And in this particular class, one thing that you brought to the attention of is in that class, you were able to really connect to the soul self. And it's because we have that time together to hold the space to open up the mind and the heart connection. Yeah. And we breathe into these spaces where we breathe in and we wrap up the front gate like a wave.
Yeah.
From the base and the root, and it passes through the heart and the throat, wraps up and over around the head like a wave washing over you.
Yeah.
And as it crashes down onto the ocean, back into the tide or back into the seashore, that crashing of the wave now covers over you, this gentle washing,
that's the sweeping,
cleansing, right?
That's the sweeping of the present.
And it goes where? It creates this infinity symbol if you look at it.
It is. That's very much.
From the bottom, it came up the front. It went through the throat and heart chakras, right? Where we're receiving these blessings from meditation. Through the meditation, it's washing over us, creating the space of stillness, of oneness, where it washes like a waterfall, cascades, comes back down through the heart and around the back of your spine, back body, cascading down your entire nadi channel, around your tushy, right back to where it all started. Center
Your tushy. You're so funny.
I'm just saying, this is the meditation. You're just talking about our soul self opening up into this awakening. When you look at the way we breathe in pranayama and when we tune into the soul self, we are in essence tuning into infinite nature, because the way that we breathe is infinite breathing. We are consciously, infinitely breathing into the soul self.
Yep. That's an internal space, man, with an infinite flow. And that's one thing that, you know, I start to recognize is, like I said, I would dwell in these realms, right? But it was like going to uncharted territories with no signs. Like I had no map, no nothing like that. And yoga really allowed me to see the journey that I really was on. Because before, it was, think about it. So for those 3.5 years, like the universe would obviously teach to everybody, but it was almost at an expedited rate because of the space that I was in. New Orleans is such a great space to get expedited lessons because the level of vulnerability allows for a completely different level of the universe to work with. Because think about it, to work in accord with the universe, like when you're vulnerable, you're allowing, see, there's two different things. And one thing that I want to make clear, especially talking about, you know, men and just masculine, it's like, one thing that vulnerability is not a weakness, first of all. Vulnerability is a strength because there's two different types of vulnerability. There's mental vulnerability and then there's spiritual vulnerability. And one thing about this is that you have to be mentally strong, but spiritually be vulnerable to yourself. You know what I mean? To yourself. That means that you have to allow your soul, allow your truth to actually permeate past all the things that try to stop it. You know what I mean? And you have to be willing to allow that. The same way that you allow yourself to sink into meditation is the same way that you have to give reverence and just grace to whatever it is that you want to allow in your life. You know, and one thing that I had to realize is that, you know, yoga taught me that there's no perfect, you know, like there's no perfection to strive for, you know, but it's everything allowed. Yoga class allowed me to be great in ways that I didn't know I could be. You see what I'm saying? And not in the standard of greatness, it's just to feel great, to be present, to feel like I know I'm divine. And, you know, to cross that barrier of like, I feel like I'm a divine being. It's like, no, I'm a divine being. You know, I'm soul first and foremost. And that's something that I went into that class knowing, and I left out of that class affirming. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference. You know, it's like I went in knowing like, yeah, I'm a divine being. I came out like, I'm pretty sure. I'm positive that there's something that I keep touching, because like I said, once you spend time in that space over and over again, it's hard to come into this life without being that.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Because that's so much more valuable to me than what I thought I wanted or perceived, because I'm 9 years into this path. This is a humble wave, you know, obviously a path that I can't even comprehend, you know, that we're all on. But in this lifetime, I can honestly say that those 9 years have been quite interesting because of that type of surrender. The first 4 years was a different type of surrender than the 4 years after, because like I said, until I ran into this beautiful wall, I didn't understand myself fully. I understood certain concepts and I was just kind of, and then yoga helped me tie everything together. It was that harmony in my chaos. You see what I'm saying? So like, that's the relationship between structure and essence, you know? So it allowed me to tie together these parts of my essence to allow myself to see who I really am. You see what I'm saying? Before that, it was hard because I was just like expanding and just opening and just, it's like, okay, so who am I? And it's a funny question because like for 3 years, I was like, every time I thought I knew who I was, I did not know who I was. I'm like, yo, I don't know. So I got to that point before, you know, really stepping into this next phase of my life. That was big, you know, like I just like, yo, I need to figure out what am I supposed to do with all this now? Like it was just part of my life. And that's why it was, you know me, some of my friends like, hey, you can do this, you can do that. I'm like, how do I
we've been making you do stuff with it. But you've been utilizing it for something really powerful, and that's you've been cultivating relationships with your parents.
Of course. You've
been re-establishing those relationships with them, especially with your dad.
Yes, big time.
Talk about that a little bit.
So I just had, I don't know. So growing up, I was an athlete, you know, so I had that normal father-son, you know, literally, I was really good at sports. So it's like, that was the connector, you know, but also being the connector was the limiter. You see what I'm saying? Because there's only so much that we could do in that space as father and son, just baseball or football, you know? And that's really what the relationship came to. And not saying that we had a bad relationship, it just was not, it wasn't as fruitful as it could have been. There was so much soil and so much potential to have a good relationship. And I think that's one thing that we have to realize is that the potential for these relationships are there. It's in part on the one who literally has the awareness and the wisdom to apply. You know what I'm saying? Like for me, I was always thinking that, well, I know that maybe my dad should do it, you know? Just no, I'm aware. And I became aware that, look, I'm 25% my mom, I'm 25% my dad, I'm 50% my own soul. They gave me this body, therefore I have their DNA. You know what I mean? And so for me, it was like, okay, I have an understanding of my mother. I don't have an understanding of my father. I need to deepen this relationship to understand the parts of me that are, you know what I mean? Like to understand that, you know, because first of all, it's a blessing to even have that presence. Secondly, you know, it's like, I've had countless friends, family members who haven't had that presence. My dad, who didn't have that presence. And this is why it's also so beneficial, because in doing so, he received the lessons that he was supposed to receive as a child, and I'm receiving those lessons that I'm supposed to receive now. You see what I'm saying? And that's because wisdom has no age. It's if you have the wisdom, and I tell this to all my cousins and all, if you become aware of something, speak that to your parents, speak that to your elders. If you know it's coming from a genuine space, and you know it's for something that's right, So I had to kind of address that within myself and kind of be the proactive person in that situation. Not saying that he wasn't there or nothing like that. It was just that he didn't have the awareness to see what I was aware of. I saw it. And that's what we have to understand, is that with great awareness and all this insight and all that comes great responsibility. You can't, you see what I'm saying? Like, that's the thing. Like, you can't love safeguards itself, and also wisdom and knowledge and all that comes with it. It safeguards itself. And the only way to tap into that power is to be vulnerable as love. Not just to, but as love. And so I chose to be vulnerable as love and deepen that relationship with my father. And it's been beneficial in ways that I didn't even foresee, because I was able to understand parts of me that have always been there that I didn't even see the correlation, or just to even have the clarity, because he's such an immediate reflection, and that's why we do have like love-hate relationship with our parents, because we'll see the things that we can literally, like, we feel it and we're like, I can't stand it. It's like, dang, I have that. Oh, I do that. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you are that next fruition, that next manifestation that can literally start that cycle. So as a child, I used to always say, like, I don't know what it was about me, man. I don't know what it is. But since a child, I've always done mediation. I've always never wanted to be part of the mediator crew. But I told them, like, I'll help with the mediation. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to wear a shirt. I don't want to do this. Come get me. I'll be on the playground. I'll mediate the situation. Just leave me, you know what I mean? And so, like, with that,
you didn't want the
just
responsibility.
like, right. So, like, I've always done that. So I never looked at the relationship with my father and be like, I need to mediate this, because I'm aware of it. See, think about it. If I just rely on my dad's state of awareness, it wouldn't have ever came to that, because from where he's at, he saw it as, oh, that's nice. But from where I'm at, like, there's so much potential here, and that's with all relationships. And that's why I'm patient with not only my father, I'm patient with my friends, I'm patient with strangers, because the universe sends me individuals. I'm patient enough to be that presence, to be that whatever needs to be reflected, whatever needs to be facilitated, whatever needs to be said or stated, or if it just needs to be present, just to be an energetic presence. I am willing, and that's what it's always been. And so doing that with my dad, it just, the universe is like, you thought you saw something. I'm about to show you something else, and that was such a big lesson that I never first, like, I just didn't see it. And it's funny, because as I had that relationship, I ended up coaching for 2 years, which was the universe, just randomly came to me, through the league that I played in. And I was just like, okay, cool, and it was so funny, because when I first did it, I just volunteered, which was hilarious, because I was like, oh, I got to do this with the home web, got to do that with the home web. I have all these other things going, but I'm gonna tell you, I'm always open, because I understand this. Like, if I go to a car dealership, right, and I know I want the specific car, but the car dealer is like, yo, I can give you something else, but you got to let go of what you thought you wanted, but I can give you better. That's how the universe has always been with me. And I've always, why would I not trust that which always continuously shows me is trustworthy? Mm-hmm. You feel me? So I did it. And I enjoyed it, because it taught me something that I would have never been able to. I literally just started to cultivate this relationship with my father, right? And then I step over into a team of amazing, and I mean amazing, young individuals. Man. These kids, these young men are so incredible, and I was just so thankful, because at that time I got 2 different dynamics that I never had. I was able to teach my dad from wisdom that I've, accrued over these years. And then I was also able to play a role that I've always been the opposite of, which is to coach, and I have such a understanding of that role as a player that when I got on the other side of it, I was like, wow, this is going to be fun, you know, because in that medium, every medium, you can impart wisdom through it. You just have to just allow it to do so, you know, and that's what happened. So everything just works in accordance. Like me having that relationship with my father, which put me in prime state to just have that understanding and just to be just rich in that kind of energy. And so just be able to, you know, give that to these amazing young men and to see them. I mean, sometimes we don't realize how ripe teenagers are for just manifestation and just becoming the more progressive version of us. You know what I'm saying? Like, these last couple of weeks have been that for me. I've been surrounded by my young cousins and just all these individuals who are younger than me that are just showing me that, like, yeah, you know, like they're coming in with what we took 20 years to, because that's just the state of their DNA. That's the state of the essence that they are flowing in with. It doesn't take long to be acclimated to the energy that you are, you know? So
true.
So like these I'm just blessed because without doing that coaching job, I wouldn't have had the understanding of how to deal with each individual young man and to understand each individual's past and what they're going through and taking that time. Because if I would have did it 1 year, I wouldn't have been able to see even though it was cut short because of, you know, COVID, what have you, it was so amazingly beautiful to see the growth I witnessed in young men in a 2-year span, less than 2 years, a year and a few months. You know, we had individuals who never played ball in their life, but, you know, having them see themselves do things that they never did, you know, having them visualize, having them constantly affirming things that they normally would never even resort to affirming for themselves. It was incredible to see what was taking shape, you know, and I mean, that's just how my life flows, to be honest. Now, you know, after surrendering so much, it's like that swell that you're talking about. What happens when you're that swell and you just identify as the ocean? What happens? Everywhere you go becomes saturated in soul. And that's how it's supposed to be, because you have that much soul to offer. But you have to be vulnerable enough to dive into it and vulnerable enough to share it all with this world that is you. You know what I mean? And that's being unapologetically whole. And that's essential.
You bring up a really good point, because in yoga, according to Tantra, and according to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, we have what we call the chitti-vrittis, the monkey mind, where the ripples of the ocean distort the surface. So you can never really see the reality of what's underneath clearly when we are allowing what's going on the surface to keep doing what it's doing, right? Because we're getting caught up in the thoughts and all the things. But we have to recognize that this and this are still the same ocean.
Yeah.
And so the drop that has been taken from the ocean has every single thing, every single atom, every single molecule, every single makeup, every single salt, every single particle of the vast ocean in the one drop. And once the drop is done with wherever it's gone, whether it's went back up to the sky to come back down, guess what? Returning back to oneness.
And look, I was just about to tell you, because the thing is, once you enter that water, that first genuine step into the ocean, you are the ocean. You're at the horizon. And most times we don't give ourselves the permission to feel that the moment that we start our path. We usually we wait halfway to where we feel like, oh, now I can feel. It's like, no, like I encourage any individual, whether it's a teenager, whether you're elderly, I don't care. Celebrate each moment of your progress, because it's a form of progress. And that appreciation, the word itself is creating value.
Yeah.
So if you want to create value in life, learn to appreciate life. Learn to appreciate all the things that you go through in life. The mundane, perceived mundane, and the divine. Because like I said, I'm fortunate enough to be in a space where that's a blurred line around here. You know, what's perceived mundane somewhere else here is divine. And what's divine here is just considered normal. You know, it's just, you know, it's like, I don't know any other way to see it.
That's
You
right.
know, so for me, like, I can't even separate from that ocean. And I think for those who genuinely step into that ocean, you realize that's the struggle, that you can't go back to the sand that you once thought you were. But the benefit is that you're not away from the shore. Now you can sweep on that shore with the fullness of the ocean that you are, going deeper into that land without losing yourself and going back home every day, sweeping onto the shore of life, all the conditions, all the things and the habits, and you'll be surprised. The more you do that, the more you're reaching deeper into the coast, into the shoreline, until you get to the core of whatever landmass, and now you're bringing all those willing to come back into the water naturally. All you have to do is be a humble wave of life. That's it. That is it. And it's
Really? Is that it really? That's how easy it is?
it's not that it's easy, it's just that the concept it's always been easy, because we can sit here and think about it. How many times we talk about oneness, universal, unconditional, yet we still get caught up on the limitation, the condition. It's when you choose to allow these understandings to settle in, when you choose to allow these things that continuously prevent, how can you use the word infinity and eternity your whole life and never understand the depth of what you're saying?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How can you say unconditional love in the universe without ever understanding the depth of what you're saying? That's why it's easier. It's just because you have to pace yourself. You have to slow down and realize that all the stuff that we try to do may not be necessary. Sit first, you know, and that's why they say, you know, come to a state of clarity first. You know, seek that first. You know, seek that, not even seeking peace. Allow yourself to settle into that peace that's already there. It's with you wherever you are. You got a body, it's there. You just have to
I
find
think we're gonna have you lead us into meditation then.
it.
So, because we have about 5 minutes left for our conversation, because talking to Illy, everything flies by way too fast. And so we're gonna have to have another conversation.
Oh man, we can have as many.
We're gonna actually have a nice meditation, a longer meditation, and then we're gonna dive into Illy's brain. But right now, we're gonna have Illy ground us into stillness and
Okay.
center us.
All right.
Right on the spot, man.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. It's a moment,
Oh,
right?
hey, we going with the flow.
That's all we do around here. All right, so just go ahead and get a nice little posture, you know, let those shoulders settle down, you know. And before we start, you know, just give yourself the ability to just be vulnerable with this moment, to actually just allow yourself to settle, you know, come to a comfortable position. I'm going to start with an inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. On this next inhale, I want you to allow it to just sink down into your heart. This next inhale, allow it to sink down into the soles of your feet. This next inhale, allow it to reach the core of the earth. Inhale to the depth of the core of the earth, and on this exhale, go out as far as you can into the universe. Just allow it to flow. Inhale into the core of the earth. Exhale and let go into the vastness, the timelessness of the universe. This space is always there. It continuously grows. It just asks for your presence, your appreciation, your acclamation. Just implement it. This is always here for you, for anybody. It's fast. It's pure. It's genuine. It's your birthright and it's your abundance. Give yourself the opportunity to be timeless, boundless, and whole. You are timeless, boundless, and whole. You are timeless, boundless, and whole. You're an eternal wave of an infinite ocean. Just return home. Allow yourself to return home. Allow your body to move any way that you need. The fluid nature of your body is necessary and needed. Stillness expresses itself in many ways. Find yours and continue to cultivate it. It's your gift to the world, your soul signature. Be vulnerable enough to dive into it. Be vulnerable enough to share it. Because you're worthy, and this world is worthy of all that you have to give it. And with that, I send you love, happiness, clarity, truth. Namaste. Love you.
Love you. And can we find out where we can follow you in the Humble Wave?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, right now you can follow me on Instagram, Illi Stovall at IG, obviously. As far as the Humble Wave, I'm actually in the process of actually putting together a curriculum, and I just want to just spread it, spread this timelessness, revive the timelessness. I'm at a point where, quite honestly, I just have a lot of love I just want to offer. And that's where my motivation and my inspiration comes. It's like, what do you do when you have enough love to offer? And I have enough.
Yes, you do. Give it away, all your love. I love it. Me too. I love giving my love to everyone.
So yes, there's plenty coming. I'm also doing graphic design, and I'm also doing some clothing coming up. So there's a lot, Yeah, the universe has been blessing me.
We'll be learning more about all your surprises. Oh man, I can't wait. Namaste, my brother. I will see you very soon.
Namaste. I appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye, sweetie.